I did speak to this when we were looking at the scope of HR, human resource planning. If you remember in our introductory, basically the process is the same. You do gap analysis in terms of forecasting for demand, depending on the strategy that you are pursuing. Or just or if you are pursuing a downsizing strategy, so you need to look at the staffing numbers that you have. So I did speak to demand forecasting, where you demand for where you focus for likely vacancies, which may be occasioned by death, by resignation, by your expansion strategy. If you're expanding, how many people you require, or if you're downsizing, probably because you're not performing well in terms of the market. So you may project your likely numbers, but also you need to forecast for supply. Where are you going to get the people that will fill the vacancies, likely vacancies? Where are they coming from? Are they coming from within the organization? So you project. Do you have the skills within the organization? Do you have a robust training plan so that you can prepare people for managerial position, succession plans, and so on and so forth? So when you do that analysis, you have ultimately, so we already looked at the integration, the vertical integration, horizontal integration of your plans. Yeah, so if you remember during that introduction, I did also indicate that at any given time, as an organization, you are supposed to have the right quantity in terms of the right number of people. You're supposed to have the right quality at the right time and at the right place. So I talked about the 4R: right quality, so right quantity, right quality, at the right place, at the right time. So that's what HR planning is all about. However, you have situations where you have more people than you require, or you may have fewer people than you require. And last time I did indicate that both scenarios, they impact your deliverables in terms of strategy implementation. Remember, you have your strategy, and then you should have a structure. It is that structure that delivers your strategy, because it is the people that you have to recruit that you have to execute the different strategic objectives. So if you have got excess, it means that you'll be paying more than you require as an organization, because it's like you have got 10 maids and you only have 10 children, or you have 4 maids. And over time, probably the kids have grown up. So it means that because the kids have grown up, they're able to do their own thing, they're able to wash their clothes, they're able to clean their bedroom. At that particular point, it means that you have got excess staff for the helpers at home. So that's what normally happens even in organization, that excess staff sometimes may be caused by technology. You introduce technology, functions or tasks which were being previously done by 30 people, now they should be done by only 5 people. Last time I did give an example of NAPSA, that NAPSA, before they digitalized their services, they used to have a lot of records, clerks, because they needed to maintain files for the pensioners and for the people, the employees, the current employees who are contributing. So they had a very big registry room and a lot of files, because when people retired, they needed to retrieve those files, compute, And I'm sure in government you've heard before digitalization that when you retire, you have to look for a file, and it takes sometimes even a year, and so on and so forth. So, Malao, can you mute? So, immediately you introduce technology where you had the 30 records cracks. Immediately introduce technology, you may not need 30, you may just need maybe 5, or you may need 6. And then the others, of course, now even the 6 that you need to retrain them in the how to navigate the system, the digital platform, and you may just recruit maybe 2 or 3, maybe ICT experts. So immediate technology is introduced, then you have excess staff. That's what it means. Remember, excess staff according to the Employment Code Act. So, by the way, the exams, the exam, some of the things that I've been discussing with the Zimbabwe Open University is to localize some of the questions. So, even on the Employment Code Act, I've given them literature. I saw that last year your colleagues, I think they were given questions relating to the employment code, and like those examples we have Zimbabwean. So when you're practicing HR or you're in management, you need to understand. So you need to read that document, the Employment Code Act. It is not a document for lawyers. It is a document for HR practitioners. It's a document for managers, because you need to interpret what is there. It's more like a constitution. So the principal legislation that governs employment in Zambia is called the Employment Code Act. So you should know your employment rights so that people don't trump up, especially for you, even doing human resource. In terms of policy, in terms of principles, you need to understand. So you cannot practice HR without understanding the legal side of it, the compliance. Because once even your contract that you are saving, if you're on a fixed term contract, you're on a permanent contract, whatever provisions you have there, they should be in line with the principal registration, which is the Employment Code Act. And of course, we have got subsidiary registration, the Industrial and Labor Relations Act, we have the workers' compensations, we have so many subsidiary registration. But when it comes to principal registration relating to employment rights, even your conditions of service, they are anchored on the Employment Code Act. So the Employment Code Act has defined grounds upon which your contract of service, your employment contract could be terminated. So those grounds. So I saw those gaps, of course, in the word, but for those who are doing the e-campus, because we did that, we've provided for those. So one of the grounds upon which your contract could be terminated, it is restructuring. Your contract can be terminated if your organization is so. It's a legal. It's within the legal framework. When there's excess staff, the organizations are allowed to terminate your contract. At the height of the COVID pandemic, there were actually statutory instruments which were into SI 48. If you read SI 48, it actually that's the some of the provisions that relate to termination of your contract by reason of redundancy. So they are to waive, because you're supposed to give, if you're terminating a contract by reason of redundancy, you're supposed to give 60 days notice to the Ministry of Labor, and then you give 30 days to the affected employees or their representative. And that 30 days, if you notify the employer's representative or the affected employees, it is for the employer and the union or the employees to negotiate so that you can minimize the impact of downsizing. But during COVID, that was waived because you're facing challenges. If you're in the hospitality industry, people have stopped coming to this country, or they've stopped going to your, if it's within the country, going to Livingston, seeing the Victoria, because they're scared if they're going to book a room at the Avan or any other hotel, they may contract COVID. So that period where you need to notify the Ministry of Labour, 60 days, you give 60 days notice, and also give 30 days notice to the employees or their representative. It was waived. So there are clear guidelines when it comes to termination of a contract. So what I'm trying to emphasize that your contract can be terminated by reason of redundance, and the redundance could mean the organization is not performing well, it has lost the market share, so the sales have gone down. Because the sales have gone down, you're not generating enough income. Because you're not generating enough income, it means you can't sustain the current workforce. So you need to make a decision whether as an organization you sink as an organization, or you can save the organization by sacrificing some people. That's what redundant something where especially you have you have lost the market share and you can't generate sufficient resources. So you sacrifice others. And this is what led to most of the parastatal companies collapsing, because we wanted to save the entire organization. In the process, all those organizations collapsed. So excess labor could be occasioned by technology. It could be occasioned by over-employing, because when you're doing the projection in terms of the demand forecasting, how many people you need, you are using guesswork. You need to use the tools. So there are a number of tools that you use when you're forecasting for demand. You can use managerial judgment, and you can use the ratios in terms of the volume of work, or if it's the lecturers, you can use the ratios in terms of the courses. How many courses are you supposed to teach? You're supposed to teach 5. You're supposed to teach 5 courses. If you're teaching 5 courses in a day, if you're teaching 2 hours, it means that you have 10 hours, or you're supposed to teach 4 courses. So you can use a number of yardsticks in terms of determining your workload. So when you do workload analysis, then you can determine how many people you need. You can also use trends. In the past, this period, if we had so many, we had so many people demanding for our products. Then there was a boom. It means that we need more people to serve the clients that are coming. So you can use a number of yardsticks in terms of determining the right number. Now, if you get it wrong, then you have excess staff, and excess staff, it's a cost, because instead of reinvesting that money, you'll be paying people who are not supposed to. So the easiest way to, when you have excess staff, it is to declare them redundant, because the law provides for that you can terminate a contract of employees who are on permanent contract or on fixed term contract by declaring redundant. It's provided for, provided you follow the due process. What is the due process? What I articulated earlier. You notify the Minister of Labour 60 days. You notify the employees 30 days. You engage into discussion on how to minimize the impact. You clearly state in terms of the package they're entitled to, and the law has prescribed minimum standard. If you declare someone redundant, you need to pay them at least 2 months' salary for each year saved. So if someone is getting 10,000, it means every year when you declare them redundant, you are paying them 20,000. If you have saved for 2 years, it means to be 20,000 by 2. That would be 40,000. That's what it means, of course, with leave days and so on and so forth. So you follow that due process, then you'd have complied. So it is legal. of course, if someone is underperforming, you can you can terminate their contract. Even then, you follow the due process. You try to press them on a performance improvement program. They don't improve. Ultimately, you can terminate their contract. Those who misconduct themselves, engage in corruption, and so on, you can terminate their contract. Or the fourth one, which is not very common, when an employer adversely changes your conditions of service without your consent. You are getting a 10,000, and then without your consent, the employer just reduces your salary from 10,000 to 9,000, and they didn't consult you. According to the law, it means that contract has been terminated by reason of redundancy, and then the redundancy provision kicks in, and so on and so forth. So ordinarily, when you have got excess staff, you are supposed to declare people redundant. However, there are alternative strategies to employment downsizing. In other words, there are alternative strategies on how to manage surplus labor. So one of the reasons why you'd want to resort to alternative strategies instead of going for outright redundancy is that organizations that undertake redundancy program, they tend to damage their reputation. In future, employees who value job security may not actually be attracted. So if it was because you are facing challenges in terms of the market share, you've lost business, you've lost clientele base, in future, even when there's a rebound in terms of business performance, it may be difficult to attract the best talent, especially the talent that values job security. But also the other issue, when you declare people redundant, the surviving employees, those who remain employees, they tend to be traumatized. I want to believe some of you could have witnessed or undergone through that process where you've been declared redundant. You can imagine you have a regular income, you are renting an apartment in Charleston, if you're in Osaka, or in Kablonga, and you're getting a 20,000, and you're able to pay for your rentals if 5,000. You're able to take your children to private schools. You have got a medical scheme. Your employer have got a medical scheme. You are entitled to 200 liters of fuel. You're entitled to talk time, electricity units, and also a holiday once in a year. All of a sudden, they're declaring you redundant. It means if you don't have a house, you now have to start thinking about relocating from Kablonga to the nearby place, which is cheaper. You have to withdraw your children from private schools. You take them probably to government now, which is free. You have no access now to healthcare, private clinics, because probably that's why you're going. So now you have to go to government hospitals and clinics. Of course, we are saying those are not bad, but basically that's the life that you've enjoyed. So it is quite, other people fail to cope with that. They go into depression, others have died. So even the people who remain the employees, they get traumatized because they're not too sure whether the next time it will be them to be affected. So organization, as much as possible, would want to use redundancy as the last resort. And that's why they will employ alternative strategies. So there's a difference where you have earmarked people for redundancy, unlike when you use other strategies. So the strategies that you use to employment downsize, one of them, it is instituting a hiring freeze. So instead of declaring people redundant when you discover that you've got excess staff, so you've changed your corporate strategy, and that strategy is focusing, the focus area probably is the technology. If we go back to technology, so it means certain departments have to follow. Or probably your focus area is like if you look at what has happened to Standard Chartered Bank, they're talking about selling one of the section of their banking, which is retail. So retail is being sold. Actually, the Bank of Zambia has approved that. So ultimately, you just remain with corporate. And then those who are buying, of course, the terms, I know they have protected maybe jobs, but sometimes you find that they may not guarantee that jobs will be protected. So what will be important is that if you've got excess, the excess staff, what you do instead of when there's a vacance, then you okay, sorry, that's the problem when you're at the office. There's some disturbance. Somebody came. Okay, so I was talking about the instituting a hiring freeze. So the way you implement this one, if your target is to reduce the workforce, let's assume you're Zambia breweries and you discover that overall you're overemployed, or whatever circumstance could have occasioned the excess staff, you discover that you have excess of 100 employees. So you can institute a hiring freeze. You'll be saying, going forward, we shall not recruit people from outside. So when there's a vacancy, in the next 5 years, would want to reach the optimum number in terms of the staffing. So you may have 4,000 employees and your optimum number, it is 4,000. So it means that in the next 5 years, you may want to reach that 4,000 so that the 100 you may actually manage them using this alternative strategy. Because the easiest way would be to declare the 100. So probably the 100 could be coming from different department or division. So you impose a recruitment freeze. When there's a vacancy in the department, you don't recruit people from outside. What you do, you just redeploy people. If it's a critical department, you look at people who can manage or who can work in that department where there's a vacancy. There's another vacancy, someone dies, or unfortunate, we die, and you need to account for death, especially for big organization. You see that in the government, you can imagine Osaka province, how many teachers are dying every month, how many health workers are dying. So for large organization, you need to account, it's a must. You need to account for death. You should need to account for resignation. So someone resigns, you don't replace them. Someone is dismissed, you don't replace them, especially if they are not strategic position. Their contracts are coming to an end. Those on fixed term contracts, you don't renew them, because if your contract has come to an end, there's nothing you can do as an employee. Someone has retired. If they're on permanent contract, I hope you understand the difference between a fixed term contract and a permanent. A permanent is one which is clearly defined in the NAPS Act. The law has provided for those three options: early retirement, 55, normal retirement at 60, and also late retirement. It's also instructive in terms of how you go about if you want to try those three forms. So if you are on a permanent contract, a contract comes, you are retiring, they don't replace you, provided it's not a strategic position. One thing you need to take note that even when you have imposed recruitment or hiring freeze, there are certain strategic position. If it is ZESCO, you know that the strategic core positions or skills could be electrical engineers. So even when there's a vacancy, you can't say no, we will not replace, especially if the numbers. You can't get someone from HR or from finance to go and work as an engineer. So those you still provide for exception. But others, you find administrative, you can still move people from one department to the other. So over a period of 4 years, you find that you may actually reach the optimum number that you require. So that is one of the strategy. So that would be the better way of managing excess staff than declaring people redundant, because it has a psychological effect. Then the other one is incentivizing voluntary separation. Ordinarily, you can ask people to leave. Can you leave on your own? So there's a difference declaring people redundant and asking them to leave. So there's dignity. If I'm going to leave, just like in your personal lives, if you're in a relationship, some of you feel better if you are the one who is leaving. So if you live on your own, you are getting out of that relationship. There's a difference. Someone says, I don't want you, because that could be stuck, probably you are denied. Unlike if you say you're the one who is leaving. So similarly, at the workplace, people would want to leave. If those who leave, it to be different from those who were declared earmarked, because they'll come up with all sort of conception, myths, why me, and so on and so forth. So, of course, people, they will not live on their own. If you ask them, can you live on your own? We have excess staff. So what organizations will do, it is to make the leaving or departure of employees, excess staff, very lucrative. And that's why I'm talking about incentivizing voluntary separation. So these are living on their own, but people will not leave. You make it lucrative. For example, the law has provided a program called minimum gratuity. If people are on fixed term contract of 25%, and just in the first year of those people starting to work, you discover that actually with excess staff, probably you can't cope with competition. So you're supposed to declare those people redundant. You can still tell them, even if you leave now, you still have about 3 years. We'll give you gratuity as if you had served the full term or tenure. Or we'll give you, even if you prorate, we'll give you gratuity 100% or 90% instead of 25, which is in the contract. It means that you are attracting. If someone is on a permanent contract, they know that they still have 10 years, you tell them we'll pay you as if you had retired. Or if the form you are using for computing the pension, the occupational pension, if it's 3 months for each year saved, you may say we'll pay you 6 months for each year saved, or we'll pay you 5 months for each year. When you compute, you find that actually to be a lot of money other than waiting until you retire. Unfortunately, there's a downside of voluntary separation, because the people who leave, it is the skills that you need actually as an organization to turn around. If the organization is facing challenges, you need then skills. You need people who are innovative, who are creative, so that they can turn around the organization. But with voluntary separation, where you have incentivized, the people who leave are the knowledge workers. I'm sure, I don't know if there are people here who work for this, but at one point they have a clause where people, if they want to leave, they can leave, as long as I've worked for a specific period of, I've served with this for a certain period. But what they discovered, the people who are leaving, they were coming from critical departments, ICT, and also the technical, the engineering department, generation, transmission. Those are the people that they were losing. So that is the downside of where you incentivize, because competent knowledge workers, highly talented individuals, they are loyal to their skills. They are very loyal to their skills. So they will leave and find another job, invest that money, or get the money, go and invest it. However, people who are not very competent, they are loyal to the organization. And those are the target, and their average performers. And those are the target probably. So you find that those, even when you have dangled the carrot that we're giving you 10 months salary for each year saved, they still think that the salary is better than being given a lot of money. So you will remain with those average performers. And that's why most organizations, they have ended up actually abandoning this program of voluntary separation, even when they have been said, because they end up losing critical skills that are not loyal to the organization, but loyal to themselves because of the skills that they possess. So that is one of the strategies you can use to manage excess. You can also manage by job sharing. So at the height of the pandemic, go back to COVID, um, you find that you can share the jobs. That's what most of the airline did. Instead of declaring people redundant, you can tell your people that, okay, you'll not be working the whole day. You can work from morning up 12 hours. Another team will come, but you not get the same salary because probably the reason why you want to declare because you can't now generate sufficiently. So you share the same job. So as an organization, you'd have achieved one thing, you'd have saved cost, but still deliver on the same strategies. You share the jobs. Where you had two people, you can still have one, and the people they will share. So that is one of the strategies you can use. But okay, because we wanted to declare people redundant, and the reason we are not going to manage sustaining this current workforce. So we wanted to reduce the workforce by 50%. So if we're reducing it by 50%, this is how much we'd save. And then this would keep the organization as a going concern. But if you start sharing those jobs, you find that you still maintain, people are getting 10,000 and you are spending 10 million in terms of the wage bill per month. You may start just be spending 5 million because now people are sharing those jobs. It could be proportional. Those who work more hours, they get more. But ultimately, you are still paying the same salary. Part-time, very common. So as an organization, if you are facing challenges, you may not want to recruit. This is very common for universities. Of course, each year they have got ratios, how many full-time lecturers you should have and how many part-time. So instead of having a staff complement where everyone is full-time, you can have maybe 60% full-time, then 40% part-time. Of course, for the students, sometimes it's beneficial because you'll be tapping into industry. People have industry experience, plus the academic individuals. So you combine, students may benefit from also industry experience. But what you do as an organization, there are certain benefits which part-time employees may not accrue, such as pension. If you're on part-time, you just paid for the services that you render. So you may not accrue leave days and so on and so forth. So if you look at most of the private universities, that's why sometimes you may think that they're doing well financially because those are in business. So as much as possible, sometimes they even go against what is provided for by the regulator in terms of the ratios. So the majority of them may even be part-time, maybe part-time. And then the just very few, maybe those who are anchoring, could be full-time. Of course, that has an impact in terms of university ranking. So for you to be ranked as a university, you need to have most of the faculty staff, they need to be full-time. So that has an impact. But for private, they may not really care about university ranking and so on and so forth. Particularly if your concern is just working to be in Zambia. You only realize the importance when you want to go for further studies, for your PhD or master's outside this country, that best ranked universities are critical. If you are coming from a university which is not ranked or properly ranked, they may say, oh, you can't do this master's. You need to go and do pre-master's courses because we consider this university as a college and so on and so forth. Yeah. So anyway, I'm trying to emphasize that part-time, sometimes you may save costs. You may lay off. If you look at the mining sector, is very sensitive to high numbers. So you may lay actually people off when there's a decline, for example, in copper prices. And when there is a rebound, you can still re-employ those people. So that will save you in terms of managing your cost, leave of absence. There are certain particularly government institutions, people can go on leave of absence, and during that period, will be off the payroll. So the organization can still make huge savings. Others, they will actually go on secondment. So when they go on secondment, the host institution may take up the wage bill. So that can save the organization. However, you may try all those alternative strategies to managing excess staff or surplus labor, but you find that you still have a lot of people, and because it's a cost, which may actually choke you. So if you remember during the Third Republic, the Chiluba administration, most of people, of course, we had a number of people who were enticed because we had SAP. I don't know whether you still remember Structural Adjustment Program. Structural Adjustment, it was an IMF World Bank program which was trying to stabilize the so-called economic fundamentals, inflation and so on, and the fiscal space, the issue of reserves, which has become topical. So that time, as a country, we were in a crisis. So one of the ways they wanted us to stabilize our economy was to reduce the public sector workers, the number of the people in the public sector. So you can imagine even that time. Now, there are huge, there are a lot of vacancies, especially for important social services like education, health. We have huge gaps in terms of teachers. We don't have so many teachers. The last time, I think the former minister of education, he did actually share that we had in excess of 162,000 trained teachers who are unemployed, and then have in excess of 170,000 vacancies, but they can't recruit at once because they don't have the resources. But so you can imagine that time the government implemented voluntary, especially for non-essential services. People went on voluntary separation. If you remember, we used to have those women. I don't know whether they were paid, but they used to go and camp during the previous administration, if you remember. They would go and camp at the Ministry of Justice. Most of them were voluntary service employees, those who went on voluntary separation, most of them. I'm not too sure whether they were paid or they are now gathering somewhere. So those actually were coming from the structural adjustment program where the government has dangled the carrot to pay you more if you left now. And so others were retrenched in parastatal bodies, state-owned enterprises, they were retrenched. That's what happened. So ultimately, you may fail as an organization to leverage on those alternative strategies to downsizing and resort to termination. So as I said earlier, the Employment Code Act is a principal legislation governing employment, so it provides for the procedure. So the procedure on how to terminate a contract as a result of redundancy, and the Section 55 of the Employment Code Act does classify redundant, and these are the employer seizing or intending to seize to carry on the business by virtue of which the employees were engaged. So just taking note, what I do even for eCampus, so for eCampus, I normally have discussion. One of the assessment component, they do presentation. So I give them a lot of questions, and based on those questions, they do presentation. So those who are coming from other countries, because under campus we have a lot of people from other countries, I normally encourage them to use local examples. So even in your final exam, if there is a question which is talking about Zimbabwe, use the Zambian example. Don't stress. If you're in Mauritius, you are doing this program, use the local example. So even when it comes to the Employment Code Act, please look at what is obtaining in your jurisdiction. You'll see probably I've got registration that relate to. So use the examples, because at your level, you should be able to relate what is going on in your workplaces. So according to the Zambian one, the business ceasing or diminishing or expected ceasing or diminishing the requirement for the employees to carry out work of a particular kind in place where the employees were engaged, an adverse alteration of employee's condition of service, which the employee has not consented. So remember, that's the one I was referring to, that other than when the organization is not performing, business or is not performing well, the other form of redundance is when there's an adverse alteration of the employee's condition of service, which the employee has not consented to. So you should take note. So you can't just sit if you're a supervisor and start changing conditions of service. And that's why when there's a merger or an acquisition, what they'll do most is to compute the benefits, and they say, okay, those who want to go, you can go, we'll pay you. And then those who want to continue, they'll pay you, and they engage you on the new condition of service. So if you look at the merge, Atlas Mala and that was an acquisition actually. Atlas Mala, the merger was Finance Bank. It was Finance Bank, which other one? And Bank ABC, that was a merger. So that to harmonize the conditions of service. Even then, those who were willing, who are not happy with the new conditions, harmonized conditions, they were paid and they left. Then we had an acquisition by Access Bank. They acquired that Trasmara. So even that one, they asked employees, those who are willing to remain, they remained, but they changed the condition but paid them. So you pay them, terminate, then you sign for new conditions of service. So that is very important, that you should not change the condition of service without the employee consenting. So that's the procedure. So the first procedure, of course, is the reason which you need to give to the Minister of Labor. What's the reason for your redundancy? Then the second step is the redundancy package. You need to clearly state the redundancy package, because what the law provides is basically the minimum. So in your individual organization, your conditions of service, your contract, it could even be better. So the law has no issue if the conditions of service are more favorable to the employee. So if the law says if you're declared redundant, 2 months salary for each year sent, in your individual contracts, or if it's a collective agreement, you are represented by the union, if there is 5 months salary, the law has no issue. The law will have an issue if you pay below the minimum what is stated. Just like the law will provide for 2 days in terms of accrued leave days every month, 2 days. Organization, if you are represented, they can negotiate for 3. So like us, we have 3 and a quarter days for each month. So you can accrue those leave days. So the law has no issue. It's the same thing, maternity, the law has prescribed the minimum. So organizations, they can make them better. So as long as conditions are more favorable. So you need to clearly indicate the entitlements in terms of the employees, the procedure. You need to notify the Minister of Labor. And as you are notifying the Minister of Labor, you need to indicate the reason for redundancy, the number of categories of employees likely to be affected, the period within which the redundancy is to be effected, the nature of the redundancy package. So that's the information that should go to the. Then, of course, you need to notify also employees what I already alluded to, 30 days before the intended date of termination. The notification should include, so their representatives if they are unionized, the number of employees if more than one, the period within which termination is intended to be carried out. So these 30 days are also intended to be consultation period. So to minimize the termination or the impact, you engage into negotiations with the employer. So if you remember, about 3 years ago, the expansion project by Kalumbira, they had, I think, in excess of 7,000 people were working. Then when they're almost coming to the end of the project, they had earmarked to declare about, is it 5,000 or so? I'm not too sure of the figure. Yeah, but they engage with the union, mine workers union plus the government. That initial figure where they wanted to declare people redundant, it was reduced because other people now, the reason why you engage in, if it's about skills, you can still redeploy people. For those who have got the additional qualification, you find that somebody's in HR, but maybe they have done accounting and finance. In accounting and finance department, there may be a vacancy, so you redeploy them, or you can retrain them and redesignate them. So that's the whole idea that you minimize. So that's why you have that 30 days. But also you should know that when you declare people redundant, on the last day of working, you should pay them the redundancy package. If you don't pay them, they should be retained on the payroll. And the money that you'll be paying them during that period before you pay them shall not be deducted from their package. Just like the employer, for those who have retired, also they're retained on the payroll, and the money that you are paying them as salary when they've already retired, you don't deduct it from there, because that clause in the constitution was meant to cure a mischief. The mischief where employers, you have retired, or someone has retired, then the employer, they're not paying you. Because there was a case for one individual who had basically retired, and then the government, there was a dispute in terms of paying that person. So it went to, just a minute. Just a minute. I'm in class, by the way.
Oh, sorry. It's a quick one.
Yes, please. Okay. So sorry, that's why sometimes I remain at home so that I avoid the. So I was talking about, I don't know, what was I talking about? I've even lost what was I talking about? Sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was talking about the law, what the law has done in terms of the, and if you remember, At one point, the politician, as usual, they wanted to, if it went to Bill what was that? That was Bill 10. They wanted to remove that clause until the union protested because they were saying, no, we are spending a lot of money on people who have retired and we have retained them on the payroll. So they wanted to remove them. They wanted to remove that clause so that when you retire, they also remove you from the payroll even if they have paid you. But then the union protested, and fortunately, bill, even after they had removed, when it went to parliament, they had removed that proposal. So that's what politicians do. So if you remember Bill 10, that was it. But also the current government, if you remember, when was that? Is it 2 years ago? There were those amendments where they wanted to amend the Employment Code Act. There were provisions where they wanted to reduce the gratuity on fixed term contract, I think from 25 to around 16. There are some provisions, actually proposals, which were not favorable to the employees. The labor leaders also protested, and that's how they abandoned that. So each time politicians want to do something, when the union protest, you find that they will abandon that. That's how they abandoned Bill 10. They abandoned the same under those amendments to the Employment Code Act. Because the Employment Code Act, it's one of the best in terms of protecting employees' rights. I think in this country, since independence, that's one of the pieces of legislation that govern employment, which has really tried to protect the rights of people. That's what I'm saying. You should read so that you know your rights, but also that you don't abuse others. Because some of you may be in management position. So on the last day you pay, when you declare people redundant, on the last day of working, you pay their dues. And if you don't pay them, you should retain them on the payroll. But also SI 48, the one I was talking about during COVID, it had provided, I don't know whether it has been lifted. It had provided that where an employer demonstrates that they do not have capacity to pay redundancy package at once, they could apply right to the Minister of Labor to ask for a waiver that they pay in installment. But you need to demonstrate, you need to submit your financial statements, your bank details to demonstrate that for sure you have no capacity, because the issue was not disadvantage the employees. Now, so that's about managing excess staff, but the easiest is how to manage the deficit. Remember, we said both have a negative consequence in terms of the organization. You will not achieve your objective because you're spending money which you're supposed to reinvest to expand if you've got excess staff. If you've got a shortage, your projections were long, it means you may not meet your objective effectively and efficient. So your organizational goals, objective may not be met because you have got very few people. For example, you may have shortages in schools, so you may not meet your objective. Quality education, you may have shortages of doctors. The impact may not be seen in the education sector like immediate, but in the health sector, you see a pregnant mother, she's going to the hospital today and there are no doctors there to undertake those procedures. Someone will die, and so on and so forth. So in the health sector, it is even more devastating if you've got shortages. A business organization, you're a bank. I gave an example of a bank last time where you may define in your service charter. So some organization may have service charter in terms of turnaround. If someone steps into their branch, into their bank, how long should it take for them to be attended to? So are you spending 10 minutes if that's what you have defined in your service chart. But if there are few bank tellers, then you may take actually 1 hour, 2 hours, because there's a queue. There are very few people attending to. And I think at one point, I don't know whether those queues still exist, where you go to this bank, you're on a queue for a long time, 3 hours. And sometimes you ask yourself, why am I even suffering? 3 hours you go to a bank, but others will make a decision to leave that bank because they don't want to be subjected to such. So they'll leave. So if you've got very few people, you may end up, you may think that you are saving, but you end up actually leaving you as client. And as you leave, because banks, they rely on deposits, loans. So when people leave, then it means that their income, their cash flow also, they are affected. So it is important that you deal with the shortages. It also has an impact in terms of the employees. Where you're supposed to have 10 people, you've got 4. It means that you're burdened with work. Before long, they will experience burnout and stress. And people are stressed who are experiencing burnout, they become susceptible to ailments, diseases. So absenteeism will increase. One of the things that we do, I've seen it's not there, but for your colleagues, there are also metrics that we focus on, which relate to absenteeism and so on and so forth. So absenteeism will increase, and ultimately turnover will also increase, and that's why you need to manage. In some cases, you find that as an employee, you can't now balance your personal life and also your work life. That's why I talk about work-life balance. I've skipped that for your colleagues, but I've seen in the modules not the work-life balance. So you can go and read on your own job design, because I've seen in the modules not there. Job design, not job analysis, what I was teaching the other day. So work-life balance. So you fail to balance between your personal lives. You are working up to 20 hours. You go home very tired. Over the weekend, instead of relaxing, people are working because you want to catch up with work. So it has devastating impact, shortages, deficit when it comes to employment. So in terms of the solution, you can schedule over time. For those who major in HR, we have a course called HR Matrix and Analytics. So we look at the matrix which are supposed to be tracked by executives, by those in HR. We use the same balance scorecard, the balance scorecard for the corporate. I don't know if you covered those in your strategic management, whether you did strategic management. The 4 perspective, the customer perspective, financial perspective. Okay, you covered those. So when it comes to the HR strategy, also use the balanced HR scorecard. And then you have those different metrics that you need to track and monitor. So overtime could be one of those. So overtime, when you see a spike in terms of overtime, could be an indication that you've got a serious shortage. So you need to investigate. Or could it be poor supervision? Sometimes people may want to abuse overtime because probably it has become a regular income for them. So if there's poor supervision, they will exploit that. But that's one of the strategies you can use genuinely when you have shortages, that people can work overtime during lunch, after hours, and also over the weekend. You can subcontract some of the activities or tasks. You can employ people on short-term contracts, especially for seasonal jobs. If you're working in the agricultural sector, or right now there's a boom in terms of if you're a printing company and branding, it means there's a boom during elections. People are for campaign materials, for branding. So you can recruit people on part-time or short, what we call short contracts. Any contract that is less than 1 year, according to our employment code, is a short, it's a short-term contract. Of course, the lasting solution, you then need to go outside and recruit. Basically, this is how you manage excess. There is turnover, but seeing, I know some of the things I gave them. I hope they will not bring because some of the things they are not in your module. That's why I was saying that module needs to be revised. But these are critical HR um, functions. Okay, so do we have questions? We can end here, but we can have, if there are people have questions. Yes, Malao.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Okay, you've been making reference to the employment code, and I think you've also made mention of something like the module is kind of tailored with the Zimbabwean jurisdiction. So I wanted to ask if you could be able to avail us with these the notes or the slides that you are using, so that we are able to relate exactly to what we are talking about. Thank you.
Okay, no, I'll share. That's what I did with your colleagues. Last I shared this. I also gave them the module for eCampus. But as I said, you may find examples, Zimbabwean scenarios. That's still fine. When you are reading, you place the Zimbabwean what with the Zambian examples. That's what is important. Even as you are, if there's a question that specifically is talking about Zimbabwean companies, it's still okay. You can use the Zambian experiences. If you are in Lesotho, from Namibia, use those examples. Usually, I'll consider those because it's even more important. It means you are not just memorizing, able to apply. So, as much as possible, use the local context in terms of scenarios. Okay, any other question? When are we supposed to class? When are we supposed to meet? I know I missed yesterday. There was a meeting that just came out. When are we supposed to meet?
After lunch.
No, that's why I had this one earlier.
Yeah. When is the I think 15?
15. Okay. Yeah, but what I'll do over there, if you'll be available, I'll see this long what. Yeah, you can still have, since it's online. I know people are going to Dubai, they're going to all sorts of places. So you can consult with your colleagues. Maybe we can have 2 hours so that we can have makeup for the other class. You can advise. Okay, Christina. Is it Christina? I've seen your hand is.
Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I wanted to say that we appreciate, sir, that you would want to help us by covering on the lectures that we've missed. But then over the weekend, I feel like it would be unfair for other people maybe who are traveling, who will be in a position not to join the online classes. I don't know. I don't know, sir.
No, it's fine for me. Actually, it means that you're even giving me time. It's okay. So it's fine. We can meet on Wednesday. So that's fine. So we can resume. So by the way, when we failed to meet even during this residential, we in the past with your colleague, just like right now we are teaching even the full-time students, we are teaching them online. So we normally have classes make up at their convenience. So even yourselves, we can still have class even next month if we still have 1 or 2 hours. So that shouldn't be. Usually it may be maybe in the evening. Like for eCampus, if you were actually, because they're writing the exam next one, so what I normally do, sometimes I'll ask you eCampus to join the class, and also yourself would join the eCampus. So
That guy Chico does what? Eh,
So I think you're muted. We can't get you.
okay. So I was saying, for those who are traveling to is it the US where there's football for a holiday, or in Canada or in Mexico, or those who are going to Dubai, you travel safely. We'll meet on Wednesday. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please don't forget.
Thank you.
hello. Do we have any class today for this day?